Well, hello, folks. This is Mike Mason. I'm the Manager of Leadership Development for Disaster Cycle Services, and I'd like to get started. Welcome, everyone, to the third of the DPM Webinar Series focused on administrative and IT systems. So just a couple of ground rules. We have muted everyone's line, but it is possible to inadvertently unmute yours, so I would ask you to please be aware of that, and please make sure that you keep your line muted. Also, please turn off your webcam or video on your computer if you do have it. We have a very full agenda on today's webinar, and we hope that we will have time to get to questions. So please use the chat window to ask your questions. You can type questions into the chat window throughout the webinar. We will save them for the end. And like I said, we hope to have time to get to them. If we do not have time to get to the questions, please type them in the chat window anyway, and we will email or post answers to the questions that we have in the chat window after the completion of the webinar. So I'd like to introduce, we have two co-facilitators for today's webinar. First is Janet Oriati, who's the Regional Chief Admin Officer for the Western and Eastern Missouri regions. And then Anna Caldwell, who's a Senior Analyst for Information Management for Disaster Cycle Services Continuous Improvement. So our agenda for the webinar today, we'll talk briefly about objectives, and then we'll really get into the meat, the kind of hands-on portion of the webinar. Janet's going to look at humanitarian and organizational systems like Outlook, Skype and WebEx, Concur, GCMS, Request, and Virtual Workplace. And then Anna's going to cover DCS-specific systems like RCView, NSS, CAS 2.0, and DSARS. Then we'll briefly talk about some other significant systems that we are not covering today, and where to get more information about them. And then, like I said, if we do have time, we'll do some questions and discussion at the end as well. So our objectives for the webinar today are really to increase the knowledge and confidence to schedule and host meetings, code and reconcile expenses, order supplies, share files, and access Red Cross technology tools, and also use and understand DCS-specific systems. And then finally, one of the major objectives here is really to know where to get more information on these and other systems. So I think it's important to note that this webinar is an overview for context and awareness. It's not a training for each of these individual systems. So our objective here is not for you to know how to use each of these, but rather to make you aware of them, some of their uses, kind of how they fit together, and then again where to get more information on them. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Janet.
Great, thanks, Mike, and thanks to all of you for taking the time out of your day to learn about what I know everyone really deep down wants to know, and that's the nuts and bolts of all of our administrative systems. And so, Mike, if you could hit the next slide. As Mike said, this is not a training per se, because I'm going to ask you to fasten your seatbelt a little bit. I'm going to give an overview and try to give as much useful information on a lot of disparate systems. I will try to spend the most time focused on the business productivity, which is the last main bullet point, which includes all of our virtual workplace, OneDrive, Office 365 products, and then SharePoint, the new, what we call SharePoint Online sites, which replace the old neighborhoods. But let me start with the basics and focus on Skype, WebEx, and Outlook. And I'm actually going to reverse a little bit and start with Skype versus WebEx, and then pick up Outlook, which is kind of a bread and butter tool as we talk about scheduling Skype meetings. So next slide, Mike. And go ahead and hit the next slide. So WebEx and Skype for Business are two of, again, the three main tools we have for collaborating with two or more attendees, particularly when we want document viewing capability. So I get a lot of questions in the admin world, which is better, WebEx or Skype? What do we use when? And so let me just give you a little bit of an overview, because there's not a perfect answer. The real answer is we have two very robust tools that are available to all Red Cross employees. And knowing how to use these tools can make you much more effective, especially with working with remote audiences. So WebEx is a cost-based system, so not everybody has a WebEx account, nor should. But WebEx is robust for internal and external audiences. So for audiences where you have a lot of users calling in, some of them are not Red Crossers, or some of them are in very remote sites. WebEx has two functions. You can do a presentation on WebEx with audio like we're doing today. You can also do a training, which has more options in terms of getting you rosters, or being able to get feedback and maybe do knowledge checks. And so it's a very robust tool that you can use for that purpose as well. Some advantages. Not all users need to have the same technological capacity. So Skype for Business does assume some similarity of technological capabilities. WebEx does not. All you need is a phone and a computer with an internet connection. You don't need a built-in mic or a camera, or what have you. Again, it's good for lots of participants. WebEx comes with a maximum number of users. But here are some of the, I should say, the drawbacks, or the limits maybe is a better term. You have to reserve the WebEx conference line. If you don't, and you just think, I'll just use our region's WebEx line and I'm going to go ahead and do that, and you don't reserve it, you might accidentally step into somebody else's meeting who has reserved that line. And speaking from experience, you don't really want to do that. It's kind of embarrassing. It is region dependent and actually person dependent. So WebEx accounts are attached to a person, sometimes persons if it's a functions WebEx account. And so it's not something that you can just assume is a shared resource and you can just dial in. It is region dependent, and you have to know who the owner is. So Skype for Business, pros and cons. If you know everybody has Skype for Business, it's a great tool, but it does assume particularly post-refresh sites are up and running. If it's a new refresh device, it's Skype capable. If it's not, you better check your audience and make sure everybody can actually access the technology. It can handle multiple users. I've never tried it with 100. That might get a little cumbersome, but I've had Skype for Business comfortably accommodate groups of 15 and 20, as long as not everyone's speaking at once. Great for two-person collaborations. If you're going to share documents, you can pass your desktop function back and forth, which is really nice, which means you can work together on a document live. It's tied just to you and your user, and everybody in the Red Cross has it. If you've got a redcross.org email address, you can have a redcross.org Skype for Business account, which is great. That means no reserving lines. It links to your name, and it links to your Outlook and the other Red Cross systems. You can, so that last bullet point, you can use it with external audiences. It's just a little bit more cumbersome for them, but it is a possibility. So next slide, Mike, please. So a couple of screenshots, and then I'm actually going to do a live demo, which will probably make a little bit more sense. So Skype for Business, the window looks like this. You can type in anybody's name if they've got a redcross.org email address, or mouse over their picture if they have a picture to generate more options. And then next slide, please. And then once you access their name, that's where you have all of the different options that you can access to use this as a collaborative tool. So if we can go to the live demo, if you can pass me the puck, that'd be awesome. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my my monitor with you, and so if you can't see this, let me know, but you should be able to all see. This is my Skype for Business account that's up. You'll see the colored circle here. You should recognize this from your Outlook files if you've ever wondered what those little squares are. That means that it's going to link to your calendar so people could know if you're in a meeting, or if you want to be really tricky and just like appear like you're not at your desk. Or if, in this case, I'm in a training, so I'm going to set mine to do not disturb. So it's also a way to tell people what you're doing. You can also put a message out here. I'm working for my Eastern Missouri region today. For mousing over the name with options, actually, I'm not going to bother my regional exec. I'm going to find Mike. Oh, come on, that's not true. There are matches for you. I found you earlier. Okay, well, fine. I'll find somebody else. Let's find my staff member. Oh, there she is. Okay. So what I can do is I can mouse over her and I can access different windows here. I can send her a chat message. I can call her, particularly if you're in a location without a phone or with sketchy cell phone reception, video call, and then there are other options. And so if I click on my staff member here, I just need to move her box over. Here's where I can do things like present my desktop. So if I hit this button here, it will actually send her a present message, and that way I can collaborate with her. She will get a message asking to accept that request. She will accept it, and then we can view the same document. And then when we are actively in that collaboration, it's a very easy button to click where I can actually give her control of my desktop, which means that we can edit the same document at the same time by passing that back and forth. Just be careful when you do that. Everybody truly can see what's on your desktop, whether it's confidential or not. As you type in messages here, you know, it's just like text messaging, but be careful what you write to. Every time I do this presentation, I say there is a written record. It's not like this, you know, you can type whatever you want and assume that nobody can find it again. There is an electronic record of everything you send, as always. So I think that would be fairly obvious, but just in case. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to close this box right here. You can find anyone within the Red Cross network. If you wanted to schedule a Skype meeting with somebody, it's just like, and this is where I'm going to get into the Outlook calendar segment as well. It's just like scheduling an Outlook appointment with them. You click your scheduling assistant. You type in the person's name. You set the appointment with them. And then when you go back to, and obviously you can see free and busy. I'm scheduling for a Saturday just in case I accidentally do it. You can see the free and busy indication up here. You can see Phyllis is free on Saturday. But when I go back to the appointment, if I want to make this a Skype meeting, I do the cleverly titled Skype meeting button, and it will actually drop in and make it a Skype meeting here. And so again, that also tells you how to set an Outlook scheduler meeting. It's the same way, you just don't make it a Skype meeting. And in most regions, in every region I know, being able to schedule a meeting via Outlook is a business requirement. So if you don't know how to do that, do play around with it with one of your colleagues because it's an absolute must, particularly if you're trying to schedule a meeting with one of your department or regional leaders. So with that, Mike, if you can pop back on to the PowerPoint. Awesome. And then next slide, please. So this is just a slide that captures the basics of scheduling an Outlook meeting. If you're not sure how to do that, you can go back and access the PowerPoint at a later time. Next slide, please. And then again, this is just a reminder of what button to click for a Skype meeting. And next slide. And next slide. So coding 101 is the basic building block for coding for the Red Cross organization. These are account codes. You'll hear the term GL string or GL strand or coding, and it's all kind of the same thing. So just a very brief overview. The first part of the code is always 3 digits. That's the fund. That tells you is this national chapter, basically. So that will be P01 for chapter, or sometimes you'll see something like 052 or 011 for national codes. The next is the FCC that answers the question, whose budget? The PSE just goes along with the FCC. The APC is if there's a grant code, in other words, if there's restricted funding, or it could be your DR code if it's gray sky. Natural account code answers the question, what kind of expense? And the location code is whose region, or in the case of a DRGL strand, what state. So R256 is Eastern Missouri region code, but in a DR it would end 0025. Next slide, please. If you're wondering what you can code where, I don't expect anyone to be able to read this, but this is the expense coding matrix. There is a column for C2000, which is your disaster budget in the regional world, and it tells you which account codes you can use with C2000, and where it's grayed out, you can't use that account code. Somebody will change it. Okay, next slide, please. The most common codes for you are going to be the 5.3 series, the 5.4 series, and then some other occasional ones. I'm just going to focus on these. These are your travel codes. Remember, POV really must be approved before you incur it, because we drive toward fleet vehicles in most regions. If you have questions about that, see your RDO. Meals and other travel expenses, 53200, are basically when you're on travel status, and if you have any volunteer meetings or you're within your region, you're at 53250. The rest you can look at in detail as you review the slides, but those are going to be your most common in the travel and meetings category. Next slide, please. The other common codes are your 5.4 series, that's financial assistance, and there are very few FCCs that code to this because obviously financial assistance is something that goes with disaster. I added the blue sky designation because in level, certainly level 3 and up, some of the definitions of your natural account codes are going to be a little bit different than they would be during blue sky. So make sure to look at that, and if you hit your level 3 and above, to make sure you're re-looking at your natural account code designations. In general, in blue sky, your 54110, mass care, your sheltering and feeding expenses, CACs and DOs obviously would go in the CAC and DO line, as the name suggests. And then there are some idiosyncrasies with 54500. That's your disaster-specific training for staff members. And then 54600 generally does not go in C2000. And remember, anytime you are coding against somebody else's budget, you're going to join that organization and have a membership, and it's either going to go to 9600 or 9000. Make sure you get permission before you charge something to somebody else's budget, because typically budget owners get a little bit type A in knowing what is being expensed to their budget. Next slide, please. There are two main systems for purchasing. Two main cards, and then the third is Request, which is a purchasing system. We've got our P card, P for purchasing, that's supplies, materials, conferences. There are two ways to access that, and I will show you how in just a second. And your T card, cleverly named T for travel, which is all of your travel expenses. Most people have one or the other, but typically disaster program specialists and disaster program managers have both because of DRs. And so you have the enviable task of deciding which one to use for what. So just remember, T is for travel. That includes if you're going to buy lunch and you're within the region, that should go on your T card. However, if you're going to buy food for a DAT meeting, typically that would go on a P card because you're buying kind of bulk supplies for food. So it sometimes can be a little tricky knowing which is which. When in doubt, ask your RDO or ask your COO or CAO. So with that, just if we can hit the next two slides very quickly. These are screenshots. If you're wondering which is which, your P card or GCMS is going to look like this system. And then next slide, please. T card goes through Concur because remember T is travel, Concur is our travel system. So the Concur system is going to look like this. So if we can pass to do a quick live demo of these items. So once again, I'm going to share my monitor with you. You should be seeing my monitor now. I'm going to close out of that scheduler. I really don't want to save the changes. All right, so the first place I'm going to go is to GCMS. So you'll look for this Citibank tile on your virtual workplace. It will launch via your VM Horizon client. It's going to launch in my other monitor, and I'll have to drag it over. The connection server is still preparing the application, probably because I have so many things open. Here we go. So it's going to look like this. Make sure you log in at a minimum once every 3 months. Otherwise, it will lock you out, and you're going to need to call that 800 number on the back. You will always be prompted for security questions. And I just want to very briefly show you, if you wonder what your transaction limit is, you can actually look that up yourself on your profile. Where you'll spend most of your time are on transaction summaries. Make sure always to do your reporting cycle. Reporting cycle goes through the 23rd of every month. And your transactions will look like this. They need to be coded. They need to be reconciled with receipts uploaded. Just a little bit after the 23rd of each month. If you do not do this and you are consistently behind, they will shut off your P card, and nobody wants that, so please don't do that. The reconciliation simply looks like this, and here's where it's really important to know your GL strand for your particular region with region code and all of the rest. Okay, so that is the P card system. The T card system, remember T for travel, you're going to get really sick of me saying that. You can access either here through Concur, or you can go to the exchange. You hit your little toolie drop down and it gives you this button here. Either way works just fine. What you see up here will depend on if you have approval authority or not. This is where one would arrange travel because this will get us our negotiated Red Cross rates. And then reconciling expenses, if there are expenses that appear, they come here and you would add them to an open report, or you would add them to a new report. I don't have any expenses to show you, but they would appear here, and it's very easy to add them. The best advice for Concur is the first time you use it, just grab a buddy who happens to be very good at it and have them walk you through it. Mike, just for the sake of time, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show request to do the demo for that now, and then we'll hop back on to the PowerPoint if that's all right with you. So request, awesome, thank you. Request here, you've got your tile down here. Request is also accessible via the exchange by your little tool menu as well. I'm going to click on here. Every employee should have access to request. If you're not sure how to do that, see either your RDO or your COO. There are instructions that are posted in the payment card neighborhood. Request is what you use for ordering from negotiated catalogs. So what does that mean? That means things like the warehouse, the DSSC warehouse. or the Staples catalog. There are a couple ways you can order from the Staples catalog, but Request is the one that will actually get you the approval authority to C9600. It will keep track of your POs and your PRs, so your purchase orders or purchase requisitions. This is super important in a DR, so it's very, very important that people who would have that function, if they're in logistics, to have that request authority, if they're, for example, in procurement or supplies, to have access to that. Procurement is where you'll find your different catalogs, and you can access the catalogs up here as well. And so the folks who are the ones who are responsible for accessing supplies, you usually know who you are. I just wanted to show you, here's the Staples catalog. If you're going to order heater meals, etc., and your DFS. Yes?
Yeah, your request is not showing on the screen right now.
Oh, let me try this. Thank you for letting me know that. I'm sorry, is that better?
Perfect.
Great, thank you. So let me just, I'm going to hit the home again. This is what it looks like. I apologize for that. And then the catalogs. This is what you'll see when you click on catalog if you have the function to order. All right, sorry about that. Let's go ahead and pop back onto the PowerPoint. And then go ahead if you want to advance to the slide that's after where it says business productivity. Yeah, there we go. All right, so the next segment that I'm just going to fly through is the virtual workplace. This is one of the most innovative advances we've had with the Red Cross for many, many years. I've been with the Red Cross for a little bit more than 13 years, and it really changes the way that we do business. So the virtual workplace is that site that you type in workplace.redcross.org. It gives you tiles and access in one place to most of the Red Cross technological systems. Again, in one place that you can access these apps. Sometimes I call them tiles, but they're apps. And it will get you where you need to go to accomplish whatever function you have. The nice thing about Virtual Workplace is that as you click on each app, it will launch in the browser that works best with it. So you may have noticed when I demonstrated GCMS, it came up in Internet Explorer. I don't use Internet Explorer, I use Chrome, but Virtual Workplace knows that GCMS works best on Internet Explorer. Virtual Workplace also interfaces with Office 365 and provides you access to that. So it allows you to be flexible, to be remote, to store your files on the cloud and access those files no matter what office you're working from. So very, very critical Red Cross organizational tool. If you advance to the next slide, please. OneDrive for Business is the cloud storage solution for files. So those of you who have been around for a little bit, you know, G Drive or Shared Drive, all of those eventually are phasing out. And OneDrive for Business is the place where we store our files. We can share files and we can recover files. I know of 2 instances in the past calendar year where somebody got infected with ransomware. All of their files were still there because they were on OneDrive for Business. Next slide, please. Office 365 has way more than file storage. It's also your Outlook, your calendar planning, OneDrive for Business, Yammer, there's Flow. There are all of these other apps that one can access to support the way that we do business. So let me go ahead and show you some of them live if we can pass one more time. Okay, so this should be working this time. I think I'm on the right monitor. So I had started out to access a virtual workplace. You can start with the Exchange and access your virtual workplace here. You can also just type it in directly here. It will ask you to sign in with your for real single sign-on, the one that's your redcross.org email address. Your apps will look different depending on what you have access to. So I should never have the CAS app up here because I am a CAC function too. I have the inventory and distribution. So I will have XNet. But if you have access to CAS, you shouldn't have XNet. So that's just a good example that would be relevant for you all. There are many apps that you will have access to as disaster employees, and then you can move them around and customize. So Element, because I have the fleet, but let's say I don't think that's most important. I want to move that over here. So you can customize yourself, and you can add apps by going to the App Center, and the directions to do so are really pretty intuitive. Your file storage, OneDrive for Business, you've got all of your files here. There is a way through, I'm going to hop back on, through My Desktop to see them in a more traditional way where it looks like a file directory folder. The browser-based way of seeing your files is kind of nice though, because you can also, when you're in this mode, there's these shared with me folders. So you'll see Donna and Anna Caldwell, who's on this call, Jenny, Vanessa, they've all shared files with me. And with these files, I can open them up and I can edit them, and it becomes collaborative. It's not as real time as like editing a file together on Skype, but it's a way to share information and also folders. There are a couple of folders here that you see that are shared with me, and I have access to that information. So it makes it a very easy tool. You can, if I'm going to click on these buttons here, this is how you would share. You can download files this way. You can move them or copy them. And the cloud-based does save a versioning history, just in case you're wondering, is somebody going to delete my files? So really quickly, there are ways to also just create documents directly. You can create a Word document. You can edit it within the browser, or download it and edit it in the regular ways. And you can even create surveys, or my new favorite, OneNote notebook. So a lot of tools are here for you, as well as tools that look like this. These are the other Office 365 apps that I've talked about. And so let's say you're a little bit planning oriented like I am, and you want to plan different tasks. Whoops. Well, it's going to ask me to sign in. But you have access to this Microsoft Planner. You could sign in, and it's a project management tool. Oops, I can't see my, sorry about that. Let me go back here. So depending on what it is that you need, there are video channels, OneNote places as well. So a lot of tools that are here for you to access. All right, one more system, guys, and then I will pass over to Anna. So the last thing that I want to show you is our SharePoint Online sites. So most of our regions are migrating old SharePoint sites, which we call the neighborhoods, to this new SharePoint Online version. We've got, this is Eastern Missouri's region. We have these shared document storage locations. So SharePoint is different from OneDrive for Business. OneDrive for Business are your files, and if you want to share them, you can share them with a couple of people and use that as a collaborative tool. SharePoint Online is designed to be visible to a lot of people. So for instance, in my operations folder, you will see here policies and procedures, fleet policies and procedures, COOP resource documents. These are the things that I want everybody in my regions to have access to, and I'm going to post them with the expectation that those people in the region are going to be able to find them. You can also have subsites, and so we have here, there's a shared file storage, for instance, in Eastern Missouri for DCS, but you may have a need to delve deeper. So for instance, I'm just going to click on our COOP site super quick. These subsites allow you not just to do file storage, but to have stakeholder lists, links, calendars, etc. And so SharePoint Online is very flexible. It's meant to be customized to the region, but pretty much everyone's are going to look kind of like this, so that you can have consistency. You know that it's a migrated site. The overall structure is the same, but how the region decides to leverage that technology is going to be regionally specific. And so that's a conversation with your RDO and then the region as a whole. So 30 minutes, that concludes my portion of the presentation. I know there are probably a lot of questions. The last thing that I'll say before I pass back to Anna is that there are some of these systems that you can access on your mobile device. So you can download Skype for Business as an app on your phone, either from Google Play Store or if you've got an iPhone. Concur has an app, which is really nice because you can take a picture of your receipts and post it directly to Concur. So you have that flexibility. Others of our systems like GCMS, there's no mobile app for that. And so do feel free to be hands-on and kind of look for those collaborative tools on your mobile devices as well, because they can be time savers. So with that, Mike, if you want to hit the next slide. Anna, I am going to pass the presentation over to you.
Why, thank you. Mike, I'm off mute, I'm assuming. Yep. Okay, very good. Thank you, Janet. So I appreciate very much the chance to be here today and to talk to everybody. I'm going to go through rather briskly and introduce the key systems that we use to support our work in disaster cycle services. Mike, if you go next slide, please. So the first system that we're going to talk about is RCView. The next couple of slides are kind of high level. So RCView is an in-development event management system. This is a multi-year project. This is really kind of a change for us as an organization, not unlike other organizations probably of our size. But historically, you have applications that do only one thing, and we're going to talk about some of those here in a minute. RCView is our first attempt within DCF to really move into kind of an integrated suite of applications. So looking at kind of systems and data and decision-making all across one platform. So we're going to talk about it over the course of the next couple of slides, is kind of where our ultimate vision is for RCView, but then tactically where we are with our deployment right now. Next slide. So this kind of states where we're going to be by the end of 2018, and that is calendar 2018. So at that point, we should have all of the different applications that we have currently planned for RCView deployed, and that will allow us to have this common operating picture using both maps and other data visualizations, both to help predict and plan for, as well as respond to disasters. Including activation of disaster responders. We'll talk about that in a little bit, and including tracking information about shelters, and then ultimately to provide information to the donors and to the public, but also to provide information to our partners. Next slide, please. So this next slide just kind of gives you an idea about the RCView platform and the underlying technology. These are commercial off-the-shelf products that have been configured specific for the Red Cross. One is this Noggin OCA, which is that's where the incident management is, and that's where right now we're working with things like the DAT dispatch system. And then on the left we have the Esri ArcGIS Enterprise, which is really more the spatial data analytics and the mapping component of RCView. Next slide. So let's talk a bit about what has actually been implemented so far and where we are with that. When we first started to implement RCView, it's been a little over a year ago. We started with the Esri product, and we have been using Esri mapping here at the Red Cross and Disaster Cycle Services for a number of years, it was only used by a couple of people really at national headquarters, and then there were, pockets, I guess, of capability that had just been kind of self-developed in the regions. But our initial goal was to get out there and conduct some basic map writing training to kind of lay that foundational capability in all of the regions. So we just finished up actually about a week or so ago. All regions have had at least one class, this basic map writer training. We've trained, I want to say, probably maybe 18 to 20 people across the division to now conduct this class and continue to conduct the class. Our goal was to make sure that everybody had had at least one class, but in some divisions they've already conducted a second round of training with a number of their regions. And then looking forward to the future, we're working on more of a condensed curriculum. Right now the curriculum is 2 full days of classroom work, which is really helpful when you're talking about doing a mapping piece. It's really great to be able to be collaborative about that and kind of share in real time and as you're developing the maps and working with the data. But looking at a way to maybe reduce the classroom time by developing a one-day curriculum where a lot of the work, there's pre-work that can be done, videos that can be watched, self-paced work that can be done before coming together for a full day in the classroom. And then also developing a curriculum for advanced users. There's some advanced functions in the system, and then looking also for developing some standards for mapping on operations. We did quite a bit of piloting of that last year on the operations of various sizes, but looking to kind of establish what that looks like as part of a planning cell in an operation and just kind of the standard maps that should be produced in an operation. And we've seen so far, just from the training that's been conducted across the regions, that now as operations are emerging, locally at the regional level, there's a lot of work happening in our CDU around mapping, around visualizing impact, for example, and starting to plan service delivery. So that capability is definitely taking hold. Next slide. Another capability that we're currently deploying is something called RC Collect, and this is actually the Red Cross's kind of branded version of Esri's Survey 123, and we piloted this last year during the responses to the Louisiana flooding in Matthew, and collected a lot of feedback then from the folks who led the DA work during those operations and incorporated into what's currently being rolled out. We're rolling that out through a series of town hall meetings. I think they had the 6th meeting today of 8 that are planned to provide regions with basically a toolkit to then implement this locally. What RC Collect really is it's a smartphone app, and then you can load any number of surveys onto that. So you're essentially collecting, in the case of what's being rolled out right now, it's a detailed damage assessment data, but we could develop and plan to develop other forms then that could be used to collect information. The main goals of deploying RC Collect right now are to both put this capability out there for regions so it's there in the event of as operations begin, if there's an operation of kind of the right size and people want to go ahead and use that to collect their detailed damage assessment data, they can absolutely do that. But then it also gives the foundation to have that cadre of trained workers when they're deployed on national operations. This will be the tool that will be used, and people will be familiar with it. And then this also kind of represents the first of multiple smartphone apps that will be available as part of our CDU and starts to get the workforce used to using these smartphone apps and as they're using RC Collect and our CDU. Next slide, please. So the other capability that we are implementing is the DAT dispatch capability. So right now, and since about July of last year, late July of last year, we've had 26 regions who are using DAT dispatch. They're using it primarily for event logging and notification of duty officers for events within their regions. Full implementation across all regions is going to start a little bit later this summer as part of the readiness initiative. And this will be an enhanced capability. So we have those enhancements that have been made to the system based on feedback from those first 26 regions who have been using it, but then also adding capabilities specific to stat responders. So the idea would be then that the event can be entered, the duty officer is notified, and then the duty officer will be able to activate the DAT responders. And the DAT responders will be interacting with DAT dispatch using a mobile app, and they'll be able to use that both to sign up for schedules, but also then to receive notification of events that occur when they're scheduled, to basically accept that assignment, and then get information specific to the event so they can arrive at the event, and then record information specific to the services delivered, and let folks know when they're both on and off scene. And so that deployment will begin initially with regions who are already using DAT dispatch, but then eventually rolled out to all regions. And once it's fully implemented across all regions, then it will become our system of record for all of our events at the Red Cross. Next slide. So this is some forward, future-looking as far as planned capabilities and for what we expect to add to RCView. Working now on sheltering modules. You're going to see me talk about the National Shelter System here in just a little bit, but this is essentially a replacement of the National Shelter System, which goes beyond the current capabilities and includes things like registering people in shelters and shelter management. Bulk distribution and mobile feeding. We did some preliminary piloting of some capability around that last summer, and so we'll be more fully developing that and rolling that out as part of what we're offering for operations. Inventory visibility, incident and action planning and management, and social media and public engagement. And with social media, it's both kind of inbound and outbound. We also did some piloting last year of just looking at basic inbound traffic on social media, mapping that to try to kind of have an additional layer of information about impact, and we'll be looking to do some more of that in a more formal way as we move forward into 2018. It's also so it's worth mentioning. So some things that you could see as early as coming maybe later in the summer would be potentially a pilot of that shelter registration capability. There's also ongoing discussions with both government and NGO partners about access to data sharing, and direct access to RCView. And also conversations around a data warehouse project to make data available from other systems through RCView, and then to make RCView data available to other systems. So the idea is not necessarily that all systems become replaced by RCView, but that RCView ends up also just as kind of a data repository or a receiver of data from other systems to kind of influence and that big picture of situational awareness. Next slide. So turning our attention then to a couple of our other core systems that we have. So the National Shelter System is one. This is a system that we've had since about 2006, and primarily its function is shelter tracking. During Blue Sky, we use it as a way to identify and register all the facilities that are potential shelter locations, and then during disaster operations, the system then tracks open shelters and shelter population information. Next slide. So the NSS is really important because it allows us to then have those pre-surveyed pre-surveyed locations and agreements already established with people, so that we know what those potential shelter locations are, and then allows us to then track the shelters that are open, shelter populations, and then also be able to provide open shelter information to the public. Next slide. And so as far as who's using it, so Red Cross workers clearly are using it, but also then there's local, federal, and state partners and non-government partners that have basic access to the National Shelter System, and then the public is able to access that information either through the emergency app or through redcross.org with a map of open shelters. Next slide. This just lists some NSS resources, and we have some other slides towards the back of the document that we'll refer to as well. One thing that's important mentioned on here is the sheltering toolkit. So certainly the Exchange is the go-to place for all of the toolkits and the doctrine related to the disaster programs, and that includes the disaster technology as well. Next slide. So the next system we're going to talk about is the Client Assistance System. CAS 2.0, you'll hear it referred to as was a CAS 1.0 and a CAS 0.0, if I recall correctly. We've certainly had different iterations of this system at the Red Cross for about a dozen years now, if not longer. This is a web-based app, or a web-based system that is used primarily for client casework and recovery planning, and it's used on the responses to both single-family fires and national responses. And there is a mobile CAS for use on that responses. It's the only system that's authorized for issuing client assistance. And so there's a pretty rigorous process then for granting access to it, for monitoring controls, because it is a financial system of record. And it also provides a centralized platform for interagency collaboration on behalf of disaster-affected families. Next slide. So this enhanced CAS system allows us to then improve, hopefully, the loading process of getting cases into the system, as well as recording information and then being able to issue assistance quickly. It's a shared platform, again, that scales from regional responses to large DROs without modifications in most cases. And there is a quick self-registration process that allows users to request access, and on the back end there's some validation steps that have to be completed before access is granted. And again, there's a complete toolkit for casework and recovery planning on the Exchange to learn more information about CAS as well as the program that it's supporting. Next slide. And then the last system that we're going to talk about is DSARS, which is Disaster Services Automated Reporting System. This is basically used to collect and report statistical information and financial information about incidents. So anything essentially that's getting a DR number. Data entry is at this time largely manual. It's taking information from the different systems we've been talking about, kind of aggregating them. But that data is really important. It's used to kind of monitor and guide the current disaster relief operations, as well as providing briefing information to the media, to internal Red Cross constituents and stakeholders, and then informing our preparedness activities as we kind of look back over this information that's in DSARS about size and magnitude of operations in different stages. And DSARS is something also that will eventually become replaced by RCD as we start having automated ways of collecting this data. Then this need to kind of manually collect this data is going to be no longer needed. The next slide. The next two slides, I guess. And now we're going to talk quickly about some other systems that are very important to work that we do in disaster cycle services. The first one is volunteer connection, which is key. This is our volunteer management system. It talks, obviously, it's very important from a volunteer perspective, but it's also used as part of a single sign-on solution for a number of other applications, including RCView and Edge. So in order to have access to RCView or Edge, you have to have an account in the volunteer connection system. Also, our methodology for deploying people for operations is part of the volunteer connection. Edge is our learning management system and is used for all internal staff training. We're also using it now as we're deploying different aspects of RCV to view to be able to track and manage what training people have taken on the different systems. The exchange is really important from a doctrinal perspective. Everything about the programs should be out in the exchange, as well as access to any of the reference or supporting materials, standards, and procedures. You should find those there. Class connections, these come out a couple of times a week. They're not really long, but are great resources to understand what is going on in the organization. Any of the departments has the ability to kind of reach out and put information in a kind of a short snippet into the cross connections, and it can be a great way to pick up on training or events or activities that may affect you and your work, or perhaps there's something that you're interested in that you want to participate in. Red Cross at Work, very comprehensive HR system. I'll kind of echo some of the stuff that Janet was saying about Office 365. The tools that we now have available to us compared to, I think, where we were even just a couple of years ago, really big improvements, I think, as far as collaboration, access to information, kind of one-stop shopping. And so in this case, this is kind of your one-stop shopping for all things related to your employment, if you're managing other people, to hiring, to benefits, and things like that. And then the IT customer portal, that's your self-service for IT support. That the one that you would see now is very new to us. About 10 days ago, we moved from an external IT support system. It was a Unisys system, and it was also staffed by Unisys staff. And as of about 10 days ago, we've moved to a new system that is now staffed by about 60 internal Red Cross staff that were hired specifically to provide this support. We rely very heavily on the IT customer portal for support of the applications that I've just talked about, and I think that certainly no cutover is without its hiccups, but I think so far it's going pretty well, and they've done an awful lot to make sure that they're collecting feedback and quickly fixing anything that may not be going well. So we can reach the IT service desk either through that self-service portal or by phone. The portal's great because it offers a lot of resources to kind of self-troubleshoot issues that you're having, and I think over time you'll definitely see those resources expanded as they work with all of the application owners to build out that capability. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Janet for where to get more information.
Great, thanks, Anna. So we've heard a lot of information at this group, and so most of the information that we've covered has resources and additional information that's posted to the Exchange. So all of these links will be live links in the PowerPoint document. There is a Business Systems Topic Hub on the Exchange, as well as a toolkit. So feel free to explore those as you have time. The key information links for all employees will also give some generic email inboxes. So for example, if you're having trouble with Concur, there's a redcross.org email that is checked regularly. Same thing with GCMS, same thing with a lot of the disaster-specific systems as well. And the key information will give many of those email addresses, as well as finally the DCS has a helpful contacts link as well. Next slide, please. So if you're looking for even more information, this is the place for you, or this is the slide for you. You'll see where to find all of these various resources, both as a location and then where to go for assistance. Keep in mind too, this is very self-service, where you can click on the links. It will take you somewhere to the Exchange and give you some information to read. I'm sure that you have regional resources as well. Sometimes that's just a colleague who happens to be good at it, your CAO or COO for some of the business systems. And then, of course, the IT service desk is your one-stop shop for the technical kind of questions or glitches that you may be running into. So again, this will be provided to you after the presentation. So with that, Mike, I will pass to you for the wrap-up.
Thanks so much, Janet and Anna. So obviously there's a lot of information on here, and a lot of it is contained within links. So just so everyone knows, a recorded version of this webinar will be posted to the Region and Chapter Program Leadership Toolkit, as well as this PowerPoint deck, which will be accessible for you all to scroll through and click on the links directly from the PowerPoint deck. So we have about 2 minutes, and there's just a couple of questions, and I think we can probably quickly get through them and still end on time here. And I think they're probably all for Janet. So the first question is, how do we get a WebEx account?
So WebEx accounts need approval, and actually the last I heard, they need pretty high level approval. So the first thing is check with your region to see if there is somebody in your region who actually has an active account that you might be able to access. That would be my first step. If not, you do need to request it through the IT service desk and attach the appropriate approval, which may be at the DVP level. If nobody in your region has a WebEx account, it's probably a strong business case. But I would do that first and then seek the appropriate approval, probably through your regional exec.
Great, thank you. Next question, how do we invite someone to a Skype meeting if they are not in the Red Cross?
So you can make it a Skype meeting, like view that through that calendar invite. What it will do is it will allow them to join the meeting via their browser as opposed to via the Skype for Business since they don't have an account. I have seen that work and work well. You do just need to make sure you test it first to make sure that they have the appropriate browser, that the links work, and that their audio and their mic are compatible. So again, it is possible they join through their browser, but test it first.
Okay, thank you. We have 2 more quick questions remaining, and I know we're 1 minute over now, but I think we can probably just get these last 2 questions done. So is there a list of apps that we should have access to in the virtual workplace?
I don't know about a comprehensive list, but any Red Cross business system that's available to every employee, so like your Office 365 bread and butter, your OneDrive, your mail, et cetera, those you should all have access to, as well as Red Cross at Work that everybody has. Those kinds of systems you should automatically have access to. For the others, you would have to browse, and my sort of standard reply is don't request an app that you wouldn't use on a regular basis because you'll probably be denied. But if you use a system on a regular basis and you see that the app is available when you click on the, I need something, then you can go ahead and request it.
Okay, thank you. And the last question I think is for Anna. How can we get access to NSS for county employees?
NSS for county employees. That is a great question that I honestly do not have an answer for, but I am glad to take that and follow up. I think that we may be able to answer that question through the business system site. I just backed up to that slide here that has the NSS information on it. I would go to the NSS Resource at redcross.org.
Okay, great. So that's it, and I really want to thank our co-facilitators Janet and Anna, and I think that last question actually highlighted something that I want to share with everyone. And that is that our facilitators here have really generously given their time and their knowledge of these subjects today, but they're not your POCs or your experts for these individual systems. So for questions and support for these systems, please don't seek out Janet and Anna offline for these. Rather, follow the links and the information that we've provided. to get to the actual subject matter experts for each one of these individual systems. So that being said, really want to thank our co-facilitators, and thanks to everyone on the line for your participation today. Just a reminder, this will be posted on the toolkit in its entirety by the end of this week. So if you missed any of it, or if you know anybody who wasn't able to join today, please direct them to the recorded version. And hope to see you all next month for the next in the series. So thanks again. Have a wonderful day.